Chapter 12. The Voltron Player.
So that's what resulted in us meeting in the skywalk between Alpha 1 and Alpha 6. Did you manage to get anything regarding DEL 374TA from the Council computer?
No. The terminal I used needed an access code I didn't have. As soon as I entered the DEL code, all hell broke loose. Alarms went off everywhere and the terminal displayed a warning message. Classified data. Remain at terminal until security officer arrives. Of course I didn't comply, and I had to waste a couple of them on the way out.
Phora showed interest.
I've seen similar codes pass through my communications network from time to time. They flash quickly together with other codes. The DEL with 3 or 4 digits is always followed by TA. I don't know what their significance is, possibly a series of coded statistics.
Could you crack it?
I probably could, but it would take some time. Any wrong move would bring in the security system. Also, the major part of the coded section wouldn't be displayed on my monitor. If I tried to access it, the security system would trigger.
Zach frowned. Technicalities were so tedious.
It doesn't sound like there's much hope of getting to this data.
I reckon we can get to it.
Interjected Zentran.
We must. If it's highly guarded, it's important to them, and that makes it important to us. Leave it with me for a while.
If anyone can do it, Zen, you can.
Phora smiled.
But please finish your story, Zach. You haven't told us yet how you met Venrue.
Nebulon wasn't around physically or spiritually on Zach's return to Delta 2. Zach surmised he knew of the Delta 4B trip's fruitless outcome. Zach remembered Nebulon's suggestion to spend some time at the Occupants Bar. At a walkway information kiosk, Zach ascertained its whereabouts. It was situated in a new part of the entertainment city. Feeling tired and hungry, he made his way there. Outside the bar, a series of round wicker tables with transparent force field tops were arranged on a carpeted walkway. Zach sat down at one near a pond. The sound of falling water from a marble fountain soothed him. Zach took in the mood, complimented by several attractive women in the skimpiest of clothing walking by. Peering into the bar through a tinted force field window, he saw what to his discerning eye was an incredibly good-looking girl leaning casually against the reception counter. With her side facing him, her white outfit was enhanced by long black hair reaching her waist. The ankle-length skirt was secured by a pink belt, tapering in thickness, narrow at the back and wider in the front. She turned briefly, revealing the center of the belt's triangular shape. The inverted triangle's point faced down and hung low on her slim hips. Above the belt, her exposed midriff showed a dark olive skin. A short vest with bold cutaways for arms and neck clung to firm breasts, revealing the outline of her womanly attributes. Thick straight black hair fell behind her shoulders, forming a velvet backdrop to her dark petite face. She turned again and looked directly at Zach through chunky white-rimmed sunglasses. She smiled before turning away from him. From behind, neat shoulders tapered down her olive back to a narrow waist. The long skirt didn't conceal anything. Zach didn't look away, but his mind wandered. A moment later, when he looked for her, she was gone. Behind the sound of the fountain, he heard mystical music emanating from inside the bar. Drawn by it, Zack stood up and entered through a mirrored entrance. There was something familiar about the girl he'd seen inside. He went to the reception area where she'd stood. Within the music, he recognized a popular melody, played in an unusually moving style. He found himself following the sound to where it originated. On a revolving stage, behind a Votron keyboard, sat the girl. Her riveting looks and wondrous music emanated from the elevated revolving stage, moving slowly in the center of the room. Zack was mesmerized. Suddenly it came to him. This was the same girl he'd seen on the strip outside his room. The girl who'd thought in terms of music, accompanied by the technically minded ape man. Probing her mind for telepathic alertness, he found none, and feeling he'd intruded, withdrew. It had been enough, though, to notice that she was just as curious about him. Interest dispelled his tiredness. He ordered a drink and watched the girl as the stage turned. The music reached inside him and found a place he didn't know existed. It seemed as if she played especially for him. When the stage turned so the girl faced him, he knew she was. Zack had known many good-looking women, but none that had moved him like this. He ventured a wink and gestured her to join him during a break. She didn't, though. Instead, she picked her way through the tables to the reception area. This was a new experience for Zack. For the first time in his life, he hadn't made the grade. Not knowing what to do, he did nothing. He'd never had to pursue anyone before and had no idea how to go about it. For some reason, perhaps the attraction he felt, he knew he must not influence her mentally. When she returned to the stage, Zack tried not to appear interested. Seated at the Votron, she didn't play immediately. There was silence while she appeared to be lost in thought. Then, with a fleeting glance at Zack, she started to play. The music swelled, and the emotional impact caught Zack unawares.
What is she doing to me?
Her command of the instrument was enabling her to move him. He offered no resistance, being more than willing for her to do with him whatever she pleased. It lifted Zack from interest to excitement, merging into exhilaration. The girl smiled. She knew what she was doing. Unlike the previous set, the music was no longer commercial, played in her style. Now it came from within. It seemed to tell the story of her life. Happiness, sadness, joy, and a whole array of high and low emotions that guided Zack through her personal land. At the end of the set, the mysterious girl put on pre-programmed music and made an announcement that she'd finished playing for the sequence. Once again, she disappeared to the reception area. Zack gathered himself together and rose to leave when he became aware of someone standing behind him. It was the girl. He turned around and smiled.
Hi.
Can I get you something to eat or a refreshment?
If your refreshments are half as good as your music, definitely.
The girl laughed, a little shy, and hugged the tray she'd borrowed for the occasion to her chest.
Are you an artist?
No, not this lifetime.
Said Zack, testing her.
How many lifetimes back can you remember?
She answered quickly, with no reserve, as if it was an everyday response.
You know.
If Zack wasn't already totally smitten, he was now.
Please, sit down,
he requested, as he sat down again. She hesitated, and Zack noticed how young she was. He was approaching 35 sun revolutions, and she looked no older than 18. Possibly she noticed as well.
Please sit down.
Zack repeated, gesturing to the seat next to him. She sat down awkwardly and placed the tray on the table.
What planet do you come from?
Delta 4b originally. I was born and grew up there. I also lived on Delta 4a before I came here.
Delta 4b? Where the leaders and romantics come from?
Yes.
Zack laughed, knowing the reputed attributes people born on Delta 4b were supposed to have. The news media promoted this type of nonsense. It served the council's diversion away from the truth.
I can see you're the romantic kind.
She added. If he wasn't, he was now, he thought.
What's your name?
Venrue.
She looked at him with her large green eyes.
And yours?
Mine's Zack.
He fought for something meaningful to say.
Your music. It's really great in the way that it lifts your emotions. You must practice a lot to be able to create that kind of effect.
There are times when I feel inspired, like just now, when I can convey the sensation I feel through music. As for practice, I used to.
She paused.
Not so much anymore. I'm a bit tired of practicing, to be honest.
Zack knew the feeling. His talent lay in a different direction, and had also found it uninspiring to work at something for protracted periods of time. Zentran had a greater capacity for that than he. Venrue looked down, perhaps a little dejected. Zack noticed in her a similarity to himself. He sensed the same lack of meaning to life, the same pointlessness of what others found as meaningful goals. Her hand fiddled with the tray, and Zack remembered how hungry he was. He pointed to an item on the menu, embedded into the tabletop.
Can I have some of these?
She took hold of the tray and got up.
The kitchen's closed, but come with me. Let's see what's still available.
He followed her into the kitchen, where she pointed out various dishes that appealed to her. They didn't to him, but he went along with her choice as any newly infatuated person would. His reward was her pleasure at seeing to his need, as well as discovering to his surprise that the meal was very much to his liking. She sat down and watched him eat the modest meal while making small talk. He dropped subtle seeds of interest regarding non-material phenomena to catch her attention and found her riveted. When he finished the food, she cleared the table and Zack picked his moment.
Should we go somewhere together?
Yes, that would be nice. Excuse me for a moment while I collect my pay. You can't do much in this place without Delta 2 credits.
He watched her lithe body move towards the reception area and disappear through a door. He was still watching the door when she reappeared.
We can go now.
She said on reaching the table. Outside, she said,
Where are we going?
realizing that things were suddenly going faster than she'd anticipated.
Well, this is your part of the city. You decide.
Venrue regained her composure and walked with Zack to an aircar pad where her aircar was parked. It was old, but well looked after. They climbed inside and moved off.
Tell me about Delta 4b and all its advancements.
Zack didn't want to lose step with her reality, but couldn't abide falsities.
Delta 4b is not what popular opinion makes it out to be. On a material level, there is advancement, but non-materially, individuals are rather degraded.
Oh,
All of us have some of the varied characteristics attributed to people born on different planets, so we can read into them any of our personalities. There's little truth in generalities.
actually, I've noticed that. I looked into the subject of star and planet characteristic signs and came to the same conclusion. We just talk that way to appear hip and to fit in.
Zack silently breathed a sigh of relief. He'd seen the hip and so-called intellectuals who touted nonconformity. They derived their information from the news media, which put out views that appeared to oppose the council. They read the news to be in the know. The joke was that the news media was controlled indirectly by the council on Delta 4B and simply fed intellectuals mystical nonsense that they wanted them to believe. Another calculated misdirection. Glancing out of the air car, he noticed that Venrue had brought them to a riverside resort. They climbed out and walked hand in hand towards the water's edge. There they selected a secluded spot near a low-hanging tree.
Aren't the stars beautiful?
Looking up, Zach thought of Zentran and Phora on Delta 4B. He noticed for the first time that the night sky on Delta 2 was indeed beautiful.
Yes,
He answered, although his attention wasn't really on the stars. He sat down on the grass verge at the side of the river and indicated she sit beside him. There were no lights, but it wasn't very dark. The sky was ablaze with stars, and the moon lit up her innocent face. Zach put his arm around her and felt her firm body quiver.
do you know anyone up there?
Yes, I have a brother. Not a blood brother, as I was adopted. He's a flight engineer on interplanetary service between here and Delta 6. I lived on Delta 5 as a child. Also on Tranel, a planet beyond the asteroid belt. I was adopted by his parents, the only parents I ever knew.
Zach knew the Tranorian ape race. His perception when he'd first seen Venrue, with the brother from her foster family, was correct. It had seemed unlikely at the time. He remembered something else he'd learned from Nebulon's thought transfer. Nebulon had also lived on Delta 5.
I also have some good friends up there.
He didn't elaborate, but lying back on the grass and feeling her hand on his, he reached out for her and gently drew her warmth to him.